think we're gonna make some jerky today. What do you say, Bruin? You want to make some smoked jerky today? Yeah. You want to make jerky? Yep. We'll cook it outside in the smoker? Yep. Yep. Old school stuff, right? Alright, let's go. Let's go make some jerky. Okay guys, you heard him. Old Bruin, 5.5-year-old English lab, is looking to make some jerky today. Or at least he's interested in doing so. So here are the ingredients I use for the to cure it. I'll put them all in the description afterwards. I measure the ingredients using a scale. As you can see there, it's worth the investment. And pick them up from 10, 20, however much you want to spend on it. Just try and get one that's fairly accurate. The reason I use the scale is so you can be more precise with your measurements instead of teaspoons or tablespoons or half cups or cups. Each time, if you get the formula that you like, and of course you've written it down, then you can of course duplicate that or not duplicate it. This is my third batch of jerky. First batch, I watched several videos, and one that caught my interest the most was Southern Bayou Smokers, I believe was the name. I'm hoping I got that right. Awesome stuff. I tried to watch what he was doing. He didn't have ingredients, and rightfully so. He is a business, so he's not going to give you amounts. So I came up with my own formula. About the only thing I can get out of his videos was the amount of sugar. He gave you a couple clues that gave you a ratio, but the rest I was on my own. So my first batch came out way too salty. I used 200 grams of salt for 5 pounds of round, and it was, I mean, you could eat it if you had to, but I didn't want to waste it either, so we vacuum sealed it up, and we'll use that in soups and stews and things of that nature. Of course, I was disappointed, so the second batch, which I had to do a couple days later because it was bothering me, I cut that salt down by half, and it came out really good. I liked it. I brought a mason jar into work, and that went rather quickly, and I got several compliments on it. So I'm doing it again, same formula, and we'll see how it comes out this time. Hopefully, given using the grams and same formula, it should be the same. But be back with you in a minute. Okay, before we move on, I just want to make something clear here with this pink salt, the curing salt, and also the Himalayan pink salt. You see a lot of videos where people are using pink curing salt, and I don't want somebody out there to make the mistake of thinking that they're one and the same. Okay, the curing salt is sodium nitrite. It's meant to cure, and you only need a small amount of that, 1 gram per pound, as I've written on the bag of meat. You go anything beyond 5 grams for 5 pound batch of meat, you can start causing some health issues for yourself. So again, they're not the same. One of them, the one on the left, the Himalayan pink salt, your condiment, is for sprinkling over your food. The other one is helping to cure your food, to make sure that you're not letting any little nasty bits, any bacteria form when you're doing something such as kielbasa or jerky, and when you're smoking it low and it may not be high enough to kill any bacteria that's in there, okay? So, two different things. Curing salt is not to be messed around with. 1 gram per pound. You want to weigh it. You don't want to screw up with that. It can hurt you bad, okay? I did a kielbasa video where I make note of that too, but just keep that fresh, not the same. Okay, so I'm going to spare you guys the details of having to cut the meat and all. I bought the meat 5 pound eye round, had the butcher cut it across the grain at 1/4 of an inch, approximately. First time he did it for me was fantastic, very uniform. This time, maybe it was a different meat cutter, I don't know, but it's pretty consistent anyway. So it saves me some time. I'm not going to waste time showing you guys how to slice meat. I mean, that's pretty evident as to what you have to do. But again, cut it across the grain. I had them cut it to 1/4 of an inch. So all those ingredients that I showed you earlier are now in this meat. It's been cured. The meat itself let out a lot of fluid or liquid, which it has through osmosis. I'm actually drawing a bunch of it back into it, you know. So I would marinate, or excuse me, not marinate, but rotate it every 8, 10, 12 hours or whatever, just to make sure everybody was getting their fair share of the cure. They were about that big. First time I did it, I left them whole. And square inches, I guess, on the grates, which I'm going to put it on afterwards. It's all the same, but this time I cut them in half. And I also used a tenderizer. It's got those little stainless steel needles, and you just cut them, or poke them, as it was, to try and get that marinade in there farther. So that's where we're at. This has been a couple days of marinating. It's 2.5 days right now. From here they're going to go on to these cookie racks or baking racks, which I'm going to spray liberally with some canola oil beforehand, and then they're going to go out into the smoker. It's a propane smoker. We'll get into that. I'll head outside for the details on that, but there's a couple days of curing or marinating, and that's what they look like. It smells fantastic already, but we'll be back with you shortly. Okay, on the back patio, got this smoker up to temperature. You'll have to excuse the highway noise in the background. I'm about 170 feet in elevation above it, probably 1,400 feet away from it as far as distance to it goes, but it still carries quite a bit without the benefit of the leaves in the trees. So everything else is pretty much put to bed at this point. The smoker's accessible. Pellet smoker's put away. So today, inside of that amazing smoker tube, I'm using the hickory pellets. I mentioned earlier the lump charcoal, or maybe I didn't, but I burn a piece of that in there on top of the grate, kind of let it smolder as with a piece of just hickory too. I've got the temperature right now at 188. I recommend 190. It's below freezing. It's probably about 28 degrees out here today. I've got one burner on inside of this smoker. It's a MasterBuilt Pro. I bought it probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it has done nothing wrong for me. It maintains temperature once you've got it there. It doesn't get super hot. I don't think I've ever had it much above 300 degrees, but I'm smoking anyway, so it really doesn't make a difference. I watched a video the other day, and the guy had mentioned something about the burners on these particular propane smokers, and that you can turn it all the way down to low on each of those, that one and that one, and still be high in temperature. You know, I have to open the door, crack the door a little bit to try and maintain. So what he suggested you do, without having to buy a separate hose from your tank to the smoker with the needle valve on it and all that, is to go beyond the high point, yet before you get to the off position, somewhere in there, and you can really dial down that flame on the two burners inside and really control your heat. This particular one's got vents on either side of it, as well as on the top in the rear, and you know, I don't really trust thermometers on smoker as it is, so I've got my own digital one in there with a probe inside at the height of the food that we'll be smoking. It seems to work out pretty good. Like I say, I'm shooting for 190. I'm at 187 right now. I could probably screw around with it and get to 190, but I think it'll be okay. I'm just smoking jerky, really. So, show it to you when it's loaded up, and go from there. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one of my racks for the smoker, so I've kind of got to improvise a little bit. I was able to get 3 full baking racks there, as you could see, and had to go with just a little pizza sleeve here for the last one, and I'm going to have to kind of wedge that in there. That's the sound of freedom overhead right now. Some F-15s making some kind of maneuvers this afternoon. We get it quite often where I'm located up here in the Northeast. A very welcome sound, one I have no issue with. Thank you all the guys who serve for us. Appreciate it. It's too cloudy to be able to see them, unfortunately. I'm going to pan the camera up to see them. So we see them pretty often. So I'm waiting for it to get back up to 190. We're at 185 now. Just make sure it stays there. And from that point, I'm going to go 3 hours. And after that 3 hours, I'll check them, see whether or not they're as dry as dehydrated and dry as I want them. Then I'll bring them in the house and put them in the oven to 260 degrees. I'm going to start the oven cold and just let it kind of slowly bring itself up to that temperature. My second try making jerky, I did it in the smoker, which it worked. It came out good. This time I'm just going to try something a little different for that finishing stage of getting it to 260. We'll see when we get to that point. Okay, that's it. They've reached 260, or at least the oven temperature did. It's kind of caramelized the outside. You can see the ones toward the back here. Some of the thinner ones are a little bit darker, but that's kind of what you're looking for. I'm going to grab one, and that's a sugar you see coming out of it. Perfect. I'm going to cut them up into smaller bite-sized pieces and enjoy. Okay, so while they're still warm, after you've taken them out of the oven or out of the smoker as you were at 260 degrees, it's time to cut them into manageable pieces. Again, look at that. Still got a little moisture. Tears easily. What you're seeing there is the sugars that are coming out. It looks greasy, but it's really the sugars. Ends up tacking up well afterwards once it's cooled down. Just blast them into little bite-sized pieces. The ones that are a little darker actually have a little more of a intense flavor to them. They're pretty darn good. Like this guy here. Darker, you would think it's tough, but still. There we go, folks. That's a wrap. All cut up, ready to be packaged, vacuum sealed, mason jarred. This was a 5-pound eye of round. I didn't weigh it afterwards. I'm sure it's not even anywhere close to that. It'll go quickly anyway. In any case, though it is very shelf stable, it's been cured and it's ready to eat. If you liked the video, subscribe, give me a like, shoot me a message in the chat. I'll respond to you as quickly as I can. Have a good day.